Gaming console naming conventions. Try saying that 10 times in a row. A large portion of any product sales come from its name alone. The fidget spinner had such a perfect ring to it. Had someone called it the three-sided thing that spins, it wouldn't have been nearly as popular as it is today. And this goes for any other product. Apple skipped the iPhone 9 and went straight to the iPhone X. Microsoft went from Windows 8 to Windows 10. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mario Kart goes from 8 Deluxe straight to 10. So why do these companies all hate the number 9 so much? It's because 7, 8, 9. It's because 10 is what I like to call a buzz number. It'll make anything feel more grand than it actually is. If they called the iPhone X the iPhone 9, it wouldn't have been nearly as impactful as the release of the X, even if it was the exact same device. Aren't they all? These are marketing strategies that manipulate the consumer into thinking they're buying something better than they actually are. Now you're probably wondering what any of this has to do with the Switch 2, and I'm getting there, just let me cook. PlayStation has a very simple naming convention, starting off with the PlayStation. Their second console was called the PlayStation 2, and to compete with the Nintendo DS, they released the PSP, the PlayStation Portable. Still pretty self-explanatory. Their next home console was the PS3, followed by the PS4, and then the PS5. And I'm no fortune teller, but if I were to guess the name of their next console, it would probably be the PS6. This naming convention is what I like to call common sense. Shifting over to the green side of things, let's look at Xbox. Their first console is the Xbox. Instead of calling its successor the Xbox 2, they took a different approach and named it the Xbox 360. A pretty cool name in my opinion. However, instead of continuing the pattern and calling the next console the Xbox 720, they called it the Xbox One. Okay, that's alright. Maybe they just wanted to do a soft reboot or something. So this means the next console will be the Xbox 2, right? The Xbox Series X is probably the worst named console I've ever heard of. It was so bad, it ultimately lost the console wars for Xbox and forced them to shift their focus on Game Pass instead. Now it's time to talk about Nintendo. They've always had interesting ways of naming their consoles, with the first being the Nintendo Entertainment System, immediately followed by the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. After that, Nintendo dished the whole entertainment system thing and named their next console the Nintendo 64 due to having a 64-bit CPU, making it one of the first consoles to introduce 3D gaming. This was a pretty smart move on their part because the name showcases what's new and special about the system. So surely the next console will have an even more revolutionary than Nintendo GameCube. It's a cube that you play games on. It came with a little handle though, so that's kind of cool. Due to the massive flop of the GameCube, Nintendo's next console had to be a heavy hitter, or else it would have been game over for them. But the marketing team over at Nintendo clutched up and crafted one of the greatest names in all of marketing, the Nintendo Wii. And obviously, the reason this console did well wasn't entirely because of its name. They could have called it the Nintendo Dick Butt and it still would have done pretty well, but naming it the Nintendo Wii was such a brilliant idea. It took a creative spin on the word Wii, implying that this is a console for everyone to enjoy. And how do you top that? Overnight, the Wii became Nintendo's #1 selling home console of all time. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse when Nintendo unveiled their new console, the Wii U. It's no mystery as to how Nintendo managed to fumble the bag so hard. The way they marketed this new console made it seem like an add-on to the Wii, and I think a huge portion of that is due to its name. All they had to do was call it the Wii 2 and it could have sold twice as much as it did. But regardless of how mediocre this piece of shit was, Nintendo learned from their mistakes. The Nintendo Switch was phenomenally executed. From the idea to the marketing to the name, you knew exactly what you were getting into just from hearing its name. And don't even get me started on this logo. It just works. Due to the genius marketing of the Switch, it's on the path of becoming the best-selling Nintendo console ever. Also, I'm just realizing this now, but I totally forgot to talk about their handheld consoles, which is a whole other story on its own, but basically, they were pretty fucking successful. Now we're in the present. The next Nintendo console is right around the corner, but I'm kinda worried. The Switch 2 is rumored to follow the standard Switch formula, a big screen in the middle and 2 Joy-Con things on the side. It's supposed to be a little bulkier than the Switch, but not as big as the Steam Deck. This baby has the processing power of a PS4 in handheld and a PS4 Pro when docked, which is a huge leg up from the standard Switch. It's also rumored to be backwards compatible, which means we don't need to see any more deluxe games ever again. Now I know all of these are still rumors, but it might as well be confirmed at this point. Source? Look it up. But this new console is sounding less like a new console and more of a beefed up Switch. And it's not unheard of for Nintendo. They went from the Wii to the Wii U, from the DS to the 3DS, from the NES to the SNES, and I can keep going. But every single one of these sequel consoles underperformed compared to their original. Nintendo's not dumb. And Nintendo also likes money, so I'm pretty sure they know if they call this next console the Switch 2, it'll underperform when put up against the Switch, especially since it seems to be a hardware upgrade over anything else. So they'd need to pull an Apple and market it as something new, even though it's pretty much the same thing. That's why I believe Nintendo won't call the next console the Switch 2. So what will they call it? The Nintendo Dick Button. Each console has something called a code name. This is usually a placeholder name until the marketing team finds the optimal name, or adds a U to the end. The Wii was given the nickname Revolution, and the Switch was called the NX. Right now I've seen a few rumors for the Switch 2's code name. One of them being Muji, which indirectly translates to brandless or untitled in Japanese, and the other being Oz, indirectly translating to the Wizard of Oz. It could also be referring to a measurement of weight, an ounce. Maybe this could be referring to the fact that this new console isn't too heavy, so maybe they'll call it the Nintendo Feather. Okay, that sounds fucking stupid. Whatever they decide to call it, just know it'll be short and sweet. No more than one syllable. The Switch 2's name has to be something along the lines of the Nintendo blank. Wait a sec. The Nintendo blank. It all makes sense now. Muji indirectly translates to untitled, or nothing, or blank. And an ounce is pretty lightweight, just like a blanket. And the biggest missed opportunity about the Switch was the lack of customization options. So maybe calling it the Nintendo blank can allude to the fact that this console is your blank canvas and you can make it into whatever your heart desires. Maybe the big selling point for this next console is the amount of customization options available. Or maybe I'm just off my meds. Okay, but in all seriousness, like I said before, I have no idea what the next console is going to be called, but if Nintendo wants to top the sales of the Switch, they gotta make it out to be something new, even if it isn't. The whole purpose of this video is my reasoning as to why it's not going to be called the Switch 2. I just don't think Nintendo would go that route. But if they do decide to call it the Switch 2, come back to this video and tell me I'm wrong. Until then, I'm going to call it the Nintendo Dick Butt.